Good afternoon to all, and welcome to the DCRC Ask the Experts section. My name is Ralph Bruno. I'm a senior veterinary dairy technical service veterinary for Zoetis, and also I'm serving as the DCRC as a vice president for the boards there. Today, we will also be joined by Dr. Fabio Lima. He's a professor at the School of Veterinary Medicine at UC Davis. It's a great institution that I had the opportunity to attend as a student and also to be a faculty there on my early career. For our conversation today, Dr. Lehman and I we will revisit the GNRH dose impact on reproductive responses in dairy cows. Today's session is sponsored by Zoetis, a great company that I have worked over the last 12 years. I also would like to remind you guys about our annual meeting. This year is going to be in Arlington, Texas, from November 12 to 14. For more information about our meeting, you can visit the DCRC website. That's we have our program and we have all the details for the meeting there. So today's topic is we're going to revisit about the GNRH dose, how impact on the reproductive response of dairy cows. Revisiting the GNRH, all the studies that being done over the time on the reprophysiology starts mid 1960s to 1970s, and here's the early studies from Germany where they studied the effect of GNRH on the LH response. On this study here, they use different doses, 62.5, 500, or 1500 microgram of the GNRH, and they try to see the effect on the LH response. And what they learned from this study here, that a higher dose of GNRH led to an increased response, to increased concentration of the LH at the peak. So later on, this study, still 1970s, they start studying the effect of the therapeutic effect of using the GNRH, the gonadoralin, to treat cystic ovarian cystic. And for this study, they use different doses of the GNRH. They use 25, 50, 100, 150, and 200 micrograms of the gonadotropin. And as what they learned in this study, that the peak response occurred about 2 hours after the injection was given, and by 4 hours it was started to decrease. So the peak happened right there between 2 and 4 hours right there. And what they learned, that treating ovarian follicular cystic cows with a GNRH, it was effective and create a response there when the animals receive doses higher than 25 micrograms there. So all those studies start leading to all the research on timed AI that was developed on 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000. And I studied from Kansas State, from Dr. Jeff Stephenson group there. They did a meta-analysis where they look at several studies and look at the effect of giving a gonadotropin to cows and the timing of the insemination that was relative to estrus, and they look at the pregnancy rate of those cows. And what they learned across all those studies there, if you can see at the bottom, there's more than 11,000 cows, 11,000 AIs on this study there for multiple herds. And they got a mixed effect. In some studies, they report a significant improvement. Some studies, they show a non-significant improvement. And some other studies, they had no improvement at all. So this mixed effect on the GNRH, it's being research being trying to study and try to understand this more. Later on, they developed several timed AI protocols, and one of those being the double wav sync. And the double wav sync is one of the most comprehensive. There's a lot of injections on the program to make sure the cow is going to be on a better state for response of the program. And what research have learned that the ovulation to the first GNRH of the double wav sync, it was not impacted when we have a program that will have those cows on a better state to be responding. So looking at retrospective of this study, this being triggering the researchers to try to understand more, how can we improve ovulation to the first service in order to set up those cows for a better success during the Time AI program. So at this point, I'll stop here, and I'm gonna invite Dr. Lima just to share with us all the research that he's been conducting using the GNRH on the first service, on the double wav sync there, and on also on virgin heifers using the Factrial, which is the GNRH from Zoetis. Dr. Lima, I'll let you take from here.
Let me unmute myself so people can hear me. So thanks, Ralph, for the introduction. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks to the DCRC for the opportunity to share some of the work that we have been putting together. I will share my slides in a second and I will continue. All right, so where I want to pick up is when the rationale was developed to decide what would be cost effective in response to GNRH dose, programs like the double wav sync were not yet available, and that previous study that I'll share with you, it was intriguing that you put cows very close to the day 6, day 7 the cycle, and you still couldn't obtain higher ovulatory response. And another step that brought attention to that, and I think he was probably motivated with that idea to understand if there's other factors that contribute to the success of ovulation in the beginning of the program. So it was this study conducted by Julio Giordano when he was working on his PhD with Paul Frick at the University of Madison, Wisconsin. So in that particular study, what they did, I thought was very elegant, this study design, by the way. So they wanted to test two aspects. One was the dose of GNRH. They want to see if you use different dose under two different environments, an environment with high progesterone and an environment with low progesterone, if that would impact the release of LH and potentially the ovulatory response. And what they learned in that particular study was that, yes, like when you provide like a higher dose, 200 versus 100 micrograms of GNRH, what you see with the LH peak or LH release in general, it's that increase in both in high and low progesterone. You can see that from the animals that were receiving 100 micrograms, with high progesterone, they went from 3.3 to 8.5. And for the animals that were in the low, they went from 15.7 to 23. Okay, so the overall message of that study by Julio was that, yes, GNRH dose does improve LH release in animals that are in low and high progesterone. I want to digress a little bit why we're curious about that, because one thing that was very interesting is that that very high progesterone is a situation that you might experience quite a bit in animals that are going through the double wav sync. It's pretty common for us when we were, let's say, monitoring those cows either for a study or just regular clinical service where we're looking at cows have 2 corpus luteal, etc. It's very common when you do a off sync to synchronize the cycle of those animals that you're going to have a lot of animals that are going to have high progesterone profile. And the idea is that perhaps that high progesterone might inhibit some of those animals to respond to the standard dose 100 micrograms that has been widely used in synchronization programs, and perhaps with the 200 micrograms that could be help some more animals ovulate. So then this was the idea behind the study that was designed to test the hypothesis that if we increase this dose from 100 to 200 micrograms at the generation, we might be able in the beginning of the double off sync. So it's a very specific situation that we would like to look at that. If that would lead to increase of LH release, ovulation, and pregnancy per AI. So the idea was to determine this effect of a 200 versus 100 micrograms at the first generation of the breeding off sync, and cows they were receiving the double off sync. Was that particular? We want to see what it would do with LH release, ovulation, and pregnancy per AI. So it was multi-site study. It was conducted in 2 farms here in California and another 2 farms in Wisconsin. And it was a large study where we want to make sure that we could measure the differences of treatment independent of site, independent of type of particular management strategies that might be different, like day that you're doing the program and etc. So that's why we enrolled over 6,000 dairy cows in that study. And what we did to try to be careful, we knew in advance that cows have a expression of their genetic potential under the same programs. So we ranked the cows by their genome prediction for daughter pregnancy rate. And then we went on and blocked cows by paired and sent GDPR to receive 100 or 200 micrograms. The idea was to be careful at the assignment so it could minimize genetics and let actually the program per se the difference in the increased dose at the beginning of everything be the factor leading to it. So we did LH in a subset of 18 cows, and we measured that every 30 minutes, starting before the GNRH 30 minutes and up to 4 hours, and then each hour from 4 to 6 hours. And we also measure ovulation in 523 cows from one of the days that we use. So the data we use a model that was comprehensive to assess pregnancy per AI. So we include obviously the treatment, parity, farm, sire, voluntary waiting period, technician, the interaction. So we try to include everything that could contribute to the response to their models. And the models for LH had the effect of treatment and for LH and ovulation because they were for a single farm, so they're simpler. They had the effects of treatment and parity in the model. So let's start with ovarian LH response. So what you can see here in this graph, so we had a bar graph showing the ovulatory response for primiparous and multiparous. And what we're able to see that ovulation increased approximately 10%, 4 cc, either if they were primiparous or multiparous. Okay, so it was a large subset, over 500 animals. And also we see that there was difference in parity ovulation, so you had multiparous ovulating a little bit more than primiparous. What also we're able to see was that LH, when we look at the LH over time, we saw that the animals that received 4 cc, they had an increased LH release, and there were no differences interaction with parity. The peak was slightly higher, and we were able to see in general that the animals that received 4 cc, they had an improved release of LH. And when we look at pregnancy outcomes, we also were able to see that there was an improvement in pregnancy per AI, a general improvement. And when we broke down that by parent, we were able to see that most of the increase was, even though there was not an interaction between treatment by parent, I would like to underscore that particular aspect. The benefits were larger in multipairs and primiparous. In aligns with a study from Dr. Martins from Wisconsin that was similar. They found similar results. When we broke down by farm, we were able to see that the results, even though there were some difference across the farms, there was not an interaction between treatment parent and farm, suggesting that most of the benefits are an effect of treatment impaired, but not necessarily a result of the farm. The remarks of this study was that the 200 micrograms generated dose does increase the ovulatory response in primipairs and multipairs, and that it's likely due to that LH release over time that we were able to see. And the 200 micrograms, you were able also to improve pregnancy per eye, although I must point out the benefits were continued to paired, so that the largest difference were derived from multipairs cows. Okay. I want to also share a second study that we did with heifers, and the rationale for that study was similar. We were piggybacking some work that I did now over 10 years ago in my PhD, where we were trying to model that idea that progesterone might be a factor that inhibits LH release and ovulation in dairy heifers. In that particular study, we did different combinations of animals having CL plus CIDRs to try to modulate progesterone. And when we compared the low and high progesterones, we were able to see that the high progesterone, it did inhibit LH release in those animals and ovulation. And that was the idea. So we're thinking, well, could that same rationale of increasing the dose be beneficial for these hairy heifers? So the hypothesis was that administering a high dose of gonadotropin or hydrochloride during the first injection in a 6-day co-sync plus progesterone device program would enhance ovulation and subsequently pregnancy per eye in first service in Holstein heifers. The objectives were obvious to determine the difference between 100 to 200 micrograms in ovulation and pregnancy per eye in these animals receiving a 6-day sync program. And what you see over here is that the treatment. So we did it in a single farm, and we enrolled over 1,300 heifers, and we did a subset that we did ultrasonography and blood samples to characterize ovulatory response and progesterone profiles. And what we learned was that, as expected, the animals that received 4cc, they did experience a high ovulatory response. And when we broke down by animals that had high and low progesterone, that being low less than 3 nanogram and high greater than 3 nanogram, less equal to 3 nanogram. So we were able to see that in those scenarios, the differences they exist, but they were mostly in the high animals. The benefits were more in the high than in the low for ovulation response. We did ROC curves to see if progesterone was a predictor of ovulation. It could predict the ovulation, but it was only like moderate predicted power, so it was not as great predictor as we were presumed. And when we look at pregnancy, we were unable to see that improved ovulation of the 4cc translated into improved pregnancy. We look at the effects of sire, as usually you generally see, but there were no effects, an effect of technicians, but there were no interactions between any of those factors with treatment. When we broke down by progesterone profiles, there were no effects of progesterone profile on pregnancy in that particular study. Progesterone profile, I mean high and low at the time we started the synchronization program. And there were no interactions. When we broke down by ovulation, interestingly, the animals that did not ovulate, so they didn't have, they did have lower ovulation, but the animals that didn't ovulate, we didn't see difference between the 2 and 4ccs. And we didn't see differences in pregnancy losses. So the concluding remarks of that particular study was that the 200 microgram dose of GNRH, it did improve ovulation response in Holstein heifers. In addition, as expected, progesterone negatively impact ovulatory response when high concentrations are present at the moment of GNRH. However, despite this improvement in ovulation, there were no effects on pregnancy. Some of our interpretation of those results there were some other studies that came out. There was a study from Marcos Colasso. They did a 5-day program, and they did find improved pregnancy per eye in animals that received 200 versus 100 micrograms. But one thing that was different, they use a 5-day instead of 6-day programs. And something else that they look at is that when they look at the animals that receive high doses of GNRH, they tend to come in estrus sooner. Most of them coming within 48 hours after you remove the progesterone device. We were thinking that potential to explain this discrepancy between having better response, better ovulation, even having better ovulation with the higher dose, and have better pregnancy with animal that ovulate. Why we didn't see the difference? We were thinking that perhaps some of those benefits were offset by animals that were having estrus earlier and leading to asynchronous animals being inseminated. So they might have been some animals that were having estrus 48 hours. We're not, in this particular study, we're not observing estrus in inseminated animals earlier. So that might be one of the reasons to why we didn't find pregnancy outcomes in this particular study. So that's what I was talking about with you. So in the 5-day, yes, there were some benefits in pregnancy outcomes, and those differences in ovulation, our study might be because of the some animals might have common estrus early. Unfortunately, we didn't have that as part of the experimental design to look at ahead of time. But that's what I had to share with you. It's supposed to be a short and sweet. And what I would like to do now, it's open the floor for questions. I'll let Ralph just conclude with some important information about compliance. Ralph, please go ahead and take over.
Thank you, Dr. Lima. Thank you for a great presentation and teaching us, to better understand how the GNRH kind of works. So the GNRH from Zoetis is our Factral. Factral is the only gonadorelin product that there's a flex label for 2 and 4 cc's. That's approved by the FDA. And what we're seeing is that several dairies start using the 4 cc's and getting some good results up there. So if you want to pass the next slide there, it's just our compliance and safety for the product. And if you guys would have, you can press next. And then if you guys have any questions, you guys can post on the comment box, and we're going to try to answer those questions here. I believe we might have a few minutes here to try to answer some questions from the audience. So until we get some question here, I'd like to ask a question for Dr. Lima. Dr. Lima, you think that the type of semen, sex semen and conventional semen could be a factor affecting the outcomes of those pregnancy outcomes? Because of if we believe the GNRH did what's supposed to do, GNRH does not cause pregnancy. What causes pregnancy is the semen. So the GNRH, you need to make a cow to ovulate. So we can see that across virgin heifers, older, first lactation, older cows, a higher dose of GNRH, it create more ovulation. But sometimes the pregnancy was not quite there. And we know nowadays there's people using different type of semen, sex semen, more in younger animals, beef semen, and older cows. Do you think the type of semen can be affecting the time of that, ovulation and the semen lasting on the reproductive tract? So I'll let you, if you can extrapolate a little bit and share your thoughts.
That's a great question, Ralph. I think that's part of us trying to understand what is taking place. And I'll speak from an empirical standpoint. So there was the study from JP Martin's group where they broke down, they stratified the data by sex semen, and in particular, in that particular situation, what they were able to see, they did see an interaction in the primiparous between using sex semen and response to the 4 cc. So, and I think, and then I'm now talking from a, let's say, presuming what could possibly be taking place. So we have seen in previous studies with those of virgin heifers, what happens, they will tend to ovulate a little bit sooner with the higher dose. Okay, they tend to have, after we remove progesterone device, estrus a bit sooner. It's just kind of a little bit of the time response. And as we know, there has also some empirical evidence that the, let's say, longevity of the sex semen in the reproductive tract, because of all that has been exposed, tends to be shorter. So when we put those two pieces of the puzzle together, so you have potentially, with a higher dose, animals that are coming in estrus a little bit sooner, and you have a semen being deposited that may be lasting a little bit less. So you're kind of pushing those things a little bit away, and then potentially that's why sex semen might not be as, let's say, good in the forces than it looks at with non-sex semen in those scenarios. But on the other hand, I think if you look at the 5 cc's and you, for example, for the heifers, and you look at the everybody getting bred by sex semen, when you take in consideration the animals that came in estrus and everything, you just see difference in that particular program. Okay, so perhaps in the it will be an integration of factors. So make a long story short, it likely could be a factor that let's say it diminishes the potential benefits of a higher dose, but I wouldn't say that completely offsets it, because you still can see the difference despite of that. Like our study was very large. We had a lot of differences with, we still see difference independent of having sex semen. My point is, yes, might not be the best group for that particular study, but you're still going to see difference. That's my overall interpretation of the results.
Thank you. So we just got another question here. So question from Alasa Deck. And his question is, did this GNRH can use in organic herd? So pretty much like, can GNRH be used in organic herd? You want to tackle this?
Yes, I don't know what's the latest. My understanding that it's estrus synchronizations are only like naturally prostaglandins are used. I don't know if inducing ovulation it's in the label of the drug. I don't think it's commonly used.
Yeah, I don't think for in the U.S. Organic dairies, it is not allowed to use any repro hormones to be considered on the organic herd. So organic dairies, they try to use more natural estrus detection and try to have strategies to get cows bred by natural heat.
Yeah, and I would say I think that's an important point that you brought. I think in different countries they might have different rules what can be used in an organic dairy farm, but in the U.S., as far as I can tell, people follow those rules because otherwise they might not be able to sell their product as organic. So those are very strict rules that the organic, let's say, policymakers have in place, and I think I haven't seen anybody trying to play around those rules. So I don't think anybody uses hormones, as far as I can tell, the people that I interact with.
Very good. Well, I guess I don't see very many other questions here. And we probably might be kind of going over the topic they gave us here, the time. So anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for this section. I'd like to thank the DCRC the opportunity to share a little bit of our findings here on the research. I'd like to thank Zoetis from sponsoring this session of the seminar here, and all this presentation going to be, on the Streamline platforms there, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and you can access at any time. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Lima, for your time and being with us here.
My pleasure.
And with that, we'll conclude our Ask the Expert session for the DCRC. And again, I'd like to remind you guys, our annual meeting is in Arlington, Texas, November 12 to 14, and all the programs being on the website. And I look forward to see you guys there. Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye.
Have a great day.